well-regulated militia be necessary to the security of a free state? The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. It is great to have you with me on the program today. We are going guestless on the show. Do have some news to get to, including some not so great news out of Virginia, where a circuit court judge in Goochland County on Thursday afternoon declared in a request for an injunction to block the state's new one gun a month law from taking effect that the new law does not violate the constitutional rights of Virginia residents. So that case is going to be appealed. It was brought by the Virginia Citizens Defense League, as well as Gun Owners of America. This, again, the circuit court decision, so it can be appealed ultimately up to the Virginia State Court. This is not a federal lawsuit, but while this case is being appealed, it is likely that the July 1st effective date for that particular gun control law and several others in the state of Virginia is going to come and go, and these laws are likely to take effect. Although we do have another court challenge, actually, to Virginia's universal background check law. That's been filed in Lynchburg, Virginia. That case has been assigned to a judge, but it's also possible that this case does not get a hearing before the July 1st effective date. Before we get any further in our news, however, do want to let you know that the Trump campaign has a special offer just for you. President Trump would like to meet you. This will be the first opportunity that the president has had to meet with American patriots like yourself since the country started reopening. So his team going to cover the flight, hotel, and give you VIP access for yourself and a guest. President Trump will even take a picture with you as well. All you have to do is text ENGAGE to 88022 today for your chance to meet President Trump. Again, that's ENGAGE to 88022 to enter to win this contest and to join President Trump in the fight to keep America great for 4 more years, paid for by Donald J. Trump for President Incorporated. So again, as we look around the nation right now and we see what's happening, a headline out of New York today where the police commissioner warns that the city's criminal justice system is, quote, imploding. Now, keep in mind, in New York, if you apply today, right now today, for a premises permit that would allow you to keep a handgun in your home for self-defense, the city's telling you, well, we're probably not going to hear back from us till 2021. Yeah. And if you want a concealed carry license in New York, you're going to be waiting just as long, and the odds are you're going to get told no. You're going to be denied because there are very few concealed carry licenses handed out in New York City, city of over 7 million, and I think you've got less than 30,000 or so. Not as bad as places like Los Angeles County with, 10.5 million people and about 400 or so concealed carry licenses, although Sheriff Alex Villanueva said this week that he wants to actually increase that number, wants to ramp it up by as much as 400%, which sounds great on paper until you actually start doing the math. And you're like, well, 400%, if you got 400 permits, that's only like 1,600 permits. Orange County, California, with a population a third of the size of LA County, has about 12,000 concealed carry licenses because they recognize self-defense as a valid reason to get a concealed carry license, unlike New York City, unlike Los Angeles County, unlike several other jurisdictions around the country that still refuse to recognize the right to carry. So we know that demand is high for concealed carry license. And we know the demand is high for guns as well. As a matter of fact, the Chicago Tribune yesterday on Thursday with a story, guns flying off the shelf, permit applications up more than 500% amid coronavirus pandemic and George Floyd fallout. This, by the way, amounts to about 42,000 applications for firearm owner identification cards since the 1st of June in the state of Illinois. In Illinois, in order for you to legally purchase a firearm, you have to have this FOID card. That's what it's called. And there are actually court challenges to the constitutionality of that FOID card. And I imagine that the backlog that we're seeing here may lend some heft and some weight to the argument that the FOID card is an unconstitutional infringement on the right to keep and bear arms because it is delaying and denying people their ability to exercise their right to have a firearm in their home. You've got folks who applied for their FOID card back in March who still haven't heard from the Illinois State Police. They're still waiting, again, for that pre-approval to exercise a constitutional right. Now, again, despite all of these problems, the delays, the denials, the may-issue systems that we have around the country, the National Shooting Sports Foundation estimates that since January 1st, the United States has seen more than 2 million Americans exercise their right to keep and bear arms for the very first time. They've become new gun owners. That is really, really great news. Because again, the more we exercise our Second Amendment rights, I think the stronger that it becomes. Now, there's one caveat to that, though. If none of these 2 million new gun owners become Second Amendment activists, well, then I think that is, again, they may be exercising their individual rights, but those rights may not be long for this world. Not only do they need to embrace and exercise their rights, but they need to stand up and speak out in defense of these rights. The Second Amendment Foundation's Alan Gottlieb had a press release on Thursday where he talked about these new gun owners. Millions of new gun owners will reshape the Second Amendment battle, he says. Look at all of the new people who suddenly decided to exercise their Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms. We have witnessed something that is nothing short of a sea change, and in some cases might approach the level of epiphany about gun ownership. We've heard anecdotal reports from all over the country about people flocking to gun shops who have never before owned a firearm. Now that they are gun owners, we expect them to be very protective of their rights. I hope that that's the case. You know, in the Chicago Tribune story I just mentioned, they talked to a 38-year-old self-described very liberal person who has had that sea change. I don't know if it's an epiphany or not, but this 38-year-old who has long been supportive of gun control laws has now applied for his FOID card. He's been one of those that's been waiting since March to get it, but he says, I'm ready to own a firearm to protect myself and my family. That's fantastic. And I wish that the Chicago Tribune would have followed up with, so what do you think about the FOID card requirements, given that because of them, you have been delayed for months in terms of being able to exercise your right? Does that give you pause? You know, we've actually seen some folks talk to new gun owners, and that's great to hear their stories about why it is they decided to own a firearm. But we do know that there are plenty of gun owners out there who are, as long as they can get their firearm, they don't really care about restrictions, right? Well, I got mine, and that's all that I really care about. So I'm a little concerned that some of these new gun owners are going to have that attitude. That, well, you know, yeah, it was a pain in the neck, and yeah, you know, if I had to go through it again, maybe it would bug me enough to say something about it. But you know what? I really only wanted one gun. I got my one gun. And so that's fine. We can have these waiting periods. We can have these gun licensing requirements. We can have these registration requirements. We can have these non-possessory crimes, basically. If, you know, you have I shouldn't say non-possessory, a possessory level offense, but a felony level offense for a possessory crime, simply, you know, for owning a magazine that is 20 rounds in a state that says you can only have 10. Owning a firearm that the state says has been banned, even though the next state over, it's perfectly legal to own. Carrying a firearm without a license, although in the next state over, it's perfectly legal to do that. I do wonder, again, how many of these new gun owners are going to embrace the fight that we face to protect our right to keep and bear arms. Alan Gottlieb said as well, we welcome all of these new gun owners to the firearms community. We know that many of them are minorities, especially black and female citizens from literally all age groups, and they will find gun owners have a big tent with lots of room for newcomers. They can take advantage of training opportunities, meet new friends who share more interests than they might have suspected, and gain a new understanding of our efforts to protect the one fundamental right that actually protects all of the other rights. He says, we're not surprised to hear about new first-time gun owners who have discovered how much enjoyment they get out of shooting. We've seen this with generations of new gun owners who may never have had any previous experience with firearms. Many of them discover a sense of empowerment, Gottlieb said, that allows them, maybe for the first time, to understand that they can take care of themselves and that they are responsible for their own safety. Gottlieb says this new wave of gun owners could become a formidable force during this year's election. From now on, we expect millions of new gun owners to pay closer attention to candidates and reject those who would trample on their Second Amendment rights. With legions of new gun owners ready to protect these newly discovered rights, it could be a pretty scrappy election year with lots of surprises. I suspect that may be the case, particularly in some state-level races. But I got to say, I think one of the most interesting possibilities here, in terms of seeing new gun owners who, again, describe themselves as liberal. I'm a progressive, and I always hated the Second Amendment, but I really feel the need to keep and bear arms. Is that going to turn them into a Republican? Is that going to turn them into a conservative? Is that going to make them all of a sudden vote right or become a single-issue voter for that matter? I don't know that that's going to be the case. Maybe for some of these folks, but I don't think it's going to be the case for all of them. But I do think that we will start seeing more individuals on the left start to make arguments that appeal to the left about why gun control is a bad idea and why more gun control laws on the books are a bad idea. I had a piece at Bearing Arms yesterday talking about the criminal justice reform movement and why decriminalizing the right to keep and bear arms needs to be a fundamental part of criminal justice reform. Because the fact of the matter is, and gun control advocates don't want people to think about this because it's the truth, gun control laws create gun crimes. Let me say that again. Gun control laws create gun crimes. In New York City, for example, actually New York State, for example, if you possess a firearm without a license and you're caught, you could be sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. You'd carry a felony conviction around with you for the rest of your life. Head down I-95 a few hours, get to the state of Virginia. There's no license to own a firearm. You're, quote unquote, caught with a firearm that you don't have a license for. That's not a crime because you live in the state of Virginia. In fact, most states around the country don't have gun licensing laws. And in New York, particularly in New York City, these licensing laws are primarily used against young black men without serious criminal histories. This becomes their serious criminal history if they're caught with a firearm without a license. And again, we just talked about the licensing regime in New York City, which makes it nearly impossible for you to legally acquire a firearm. So in high crime neighborhoods, is it possible that there are people who are illegally carrying a firearm who have no intent of committing a violent crime? They're simply carrying for self-defense, but they can't legally get a license? Yeah, I guarantee that that's happening. So this is, and again, we can talk about magazine restrictions. We can talk about gun bans, all of these nonviolent possessory offenses that shouldn't be offenses at all. And yet you've got Democrat politicians like Joe Biden who want to empower states to put more local gun laws on the books. He wants to put more federal gun laws on the books. He wants to make a possession of your currently owned AR-15, for example, a federal felony level offense. If you don't turn that gun in, or if you don't register that firearm under the National Firearms Act, that's Joe Biden's plan. How many criminals does that create out of thin air? And that's what gun control laws do. That's what the gun control movement is all about. Creating criminals out of law-abiding citizens. Turning something that was a legal activity last week into a felony next week. And again, if we're talking about reforming police, if we're talking about reforming the criminal justice system, we need to talk about decriminalizing the Second Amendment as well. All right, before we get to today's armed citizen story, our recidivist report, and our good deed of the day, one more reminder for you that President Trump has a special offer just for you. He would like to meet you. The Trump campaign says this is going to be the first opportunity that the president has had to meet with American patriots like yourself since the country started reopening. So his team will cover the flight, hotel, give you VIP access for yourself and a guest, and President Trump will even take a picture with you as well. All you have to do is text ENGAGE to 88022 today for your chance to meet President Trump. Again, that's ENGAGE to 88022 to enter to win this contest and to join President Trump in the fight to keep America great for 4 more years. Paid for by Donald J. Trump for President Incorporated. On to our good deed of the day, our armed citizen story, but we will begin with our recidivist report. Once again, a violent crime that ends up with nothing more than probation. This time, a story out of Idaho. According to the Idaho State Journal, 42-year-old Jason Dwayne Norman accepted a plea agreement this week that reduced a charge of felony domestic battery down to a misdemeanor, sentenced on Friday, just 2 weeks after the case was filed. Norman was arrested back on June the 4th, originally, after the victim reported the incident. Her son and friend both told police that they witnessed the attack where Norman allegedly beat this woman with a baseball bat. The victim had red marks on her leg. The baseball bat was recovered from the property. According to court records, the no contact order modified at the request of the victim. In addition to 2 years on probation, Norman will be required to pay about $500 in fines and fees. Today's armed citizen story from Coloma Township, Michigan. Don't have a ton of information on this, but apparently early Thursday morning, about 2:30 in the morning, police called to reports of a shooting at a home there in Coloma Township. When they arrived, they did find an individual deceased inside the home. The homeowner says he doesn't know who this individual was. Police have not found any connection between the two, so they're not sure why this guy ended up inside that home there in Coloma, Michigan, but they are still continuing to investigate. At this point, however, this does look like a clear-cut case of self-defense. We'll try to bring more details on that story as they become available. Finally today, our good deed of the day, Roanoke County, Virginia, a couple hours to the west of Farmville, Virginia, where a very good boy, Officer Remy, came to the aid of officers in a frantic family in Roanoke who were looking for their child, a nonverbal autistic child who had disappeared, and nobody really knew where they were. According to WSET, Roanoke County Police said they responded to this call that this nonverbal boy with autism had climbed out of his window and had been wandering around in the woods. That's when they got the canine Remy involved. Now, Remy's actually still in training. Remy is a cadet. Training to sniff out explosives and track scents without attacking the person when found. That's always a good thing if you're looking for a rescue dog. Remy's handler said Remy got a sniff of the child's pillow, bounded off into the woods. Within 12 minutes of searching, officers said Remy's ears perked up, giving the signal that the boy was in the area. When officers turned around, they found the child some 15 feet away. Officer Stephen Fouts, who is Remy's handler, says, "I was elated." He said, "You probably could have heard me a mile away screaming in the woods. I wanted her to know that she had done something special." That child now safe at home with his family. Officer Fouts says Remy being praised in the department for her rescue. By the way, I'm sorry for misgendering Remy. I said that Remy was a good boy. Remy is a very good girl. Officer Fouts says that Remy did get some treats, some extra attention, playtime, scratches behind the ears. The officers say that this was Remy's first track. And Officer Fouts says that she is a very promising addition to the team. So in the right place at the right time and willing and able to follow a scent, Officer Remy and her handler, Officer Fouts, there in Roanoke County, Virginia. We thank you both for your good deeds. And I hope that Remy gets some extra scritches. If Officer Fouts gets some extra scritches as well, I think that would be entirely appropriate. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. Want to thank you for being a part of the program today. And as always, don't forget, you can subscribe to Town Hall Media at YouTube or the Bearing Arms Cam & Company podcast on Apple Podcasts. That way you never miss a program. Also, don't forget to check in at Bearing Arms throughout the day and over the course of the weekend. We will be updating the website with the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. But until we talk again, be well, be safe, be free, and we'll see you soon with another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam & Company.